For the artists, for the passionate. Welcome to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast, or welcome if it's your first time. I am your host Jay Black, and today I'm taking on some writing advice that you see going around all the time, and again this is one that lately seems to have cropped up a bit more than it has in the past, and there's some bullshit going on here. So let's talk about the whole idea. You've probably seen this if you're anywhere on the writing community online. You've probably seen people say, hey, why don't you just write to market? And you see a whole load of people talking about, oh, but write to market and this and that. And the thing is, the way that the phrase write to market is used basically means jump on the latest trend, jump on a bandwagon. And I'm here to say that this is objectively really fucking stupid. And here's why. So let's talk about the nature of these sorts of trends. First of all, jump on the latest publishing trend or whatnot. And, trends are quick. Especially because a lot of this nowadays is fueled by things like TikTok, and that is only speeding these sorts of trends up and up and up. So you're really lucky if these trends last for 9 months. You're looking at 6 months or, even shorter period than that on average. And if you actually want to spot a trend and see, well, is this an actual, thing, or is this a flash in the pan 2 weeks thing? Well, how much time passes before you make that judgment? Because there was a trend probably about 18 months ago or so now for romance involving a human character and a beast character, sort of a la Beauty and the Beast, kind of, but on the pretense that the beast would never become human, and it often went with, quite a lot of explicitly sexual content. And that was a trend for probably about 3 months before that died, but people really thought this was going to be a huge thing, and then it wasn't. And the reason I bring up the time frames here is because of the nature of publishing and how long all of that takes. Because if you've got a trend that's 3 months, you are not going to get a book out in that time. You are not. And let's go on the assumption, I mentioned a time frame earlier, it's on the screen, that it's 9 months. Let's go with that. So you're talking about the time it takes to assess whether this is a proper trend or whether it's a flash in the pan. Let's say you're willing to jump a little bit earlier than most, and that only takes you a couple weeks. So you've got 8.5 months, give or take, to go through the entire publishing timeline. This includes writing your first draft, for starters. So if you're a big plotter, I don't know how long you spend plotting, but that could easily be months. I've seen many people talk about plotting their novels for 6 months, or even if you're just hardcore pantser, you just jump in and see what happens. How long does it take you to write, 70k first draft of a book? That's going to take rather a lot of that time, is it not? Rather a lot of your 8 months? That's going to take, half of it? Quite easily, I would think. If you're lucky, half. If you are doing it any quicker than that, then it's basically a vomit draft that you're going to have to then go into edits for, and editing is going to take longer. Drafting and editing, regardless of whichever one's quicker for you personally, for me editing is way quicker, the timeline evens out. I spend a lot more time drafting, but a lot less time editing. And a lot of people are the other way around, but it evens out being roughly the same. And just that for a book can easily take way more than 8 months, as I'm sure most of you know. And then you're not even getting into formatting. And formatting, we all know, is terrible. And, okay, so you've now got this draft of a book, it's nicely edited, it's nicely formatted and all that, and then let's have a think about where you are. Let's say, and this is ludicrous, let's say you've managed to do all that in 6 months, and I very much doubt you have, by the way. Even if you decided to self-pub it at zero notice and just throw it out as soon as it was formatted, well, it's been 6 months you spent doing this process at the very, very least. And you spent, 2 to 4 weeks establishing whether this is a real trend or not. Okay, well, this trend is 9 months, so what, you got 2 months of that left? So you're right on the tail end. And a lot of the people who were originally involved are very much fed up, and you're actually probably just gonna get a whole lot of people saying, oh my god, why are you doing this when the trend's already dead, or can't we just move on from this already? Because if you want a proper launch plan and everything, that's going to take you a whole lot more time, especially because you're going to have to make videos and graphics and all these things, and if you can do that yourself, that can be quite quick, but you're potentially looking at commissioning people to do that, and that's not necessarily, that's probably going to take longer because you want to research the perfect commission, that's also going to cost you a lot of money, and do you see what I'm getting at here? You don't have the time to do this, and certainly to not to write something that's, actually quality, that's something that you're going to be proud of in that time. You just can't. Unless you have, all these templates and this and that, and you stick to them really, really strictly. Firstly, good luck sticking to it really strictly. And second, well, then all your books are the same. And people are very quickly going to stop reading them. And, on top of that, it doesn't take into account the genre of this trend either, because you don't know if it's going to be a kinky romance trend, there have been a few of those that have gone round, or a subgenre of fantasy trend, or a sci-fi trend, or a this, or a that, and yeah. Again, if this is not in a genre you're familiar with, say you come from horror and you thought, oh, horror's not working for me, I'll just write to market, and, the new trend births on day one of your epiphany, and it's super sweet, sugary, whimsical romance. You're just gonna tell me you're gonna have a high quality, finished, formatted book with a proper launch plan and an appropriate cover and everything within a year, having never written romance before. You think you can do that, do you? I would like to see you try. And this is coming from someone who is a multi-genre writer. I've written a lot of different genres, and there's a reason I stick to thriller, horror, noir, all of that stuff. There's a reason I've made that my main, because that's what I'm actually good at. And that's what I actually like doing. If there's a fantasy trend, I've written a fair bit of fantasy in my time, or romance trend, yeah, I've written a fair bit of that in my time. Could I jump on that and write something that is actually good and polished in that amount of time? Of course I fucking couldn't. No chance. Not a chance in hell. So then you're going to tell me, well, it's alright, you can just predict trends, can't you? Okay, well, you have seen many a megacorp try and do that in your time, I am very sure. And how many of them actually take off? Like, all of this predicting trends stuff is guesswork that people do at the beginning of the year, and then rarely go back to. They'll have, if you've ever looked at Pinterest Predicts, they have a whole huge set of boards of different predicted trends that they predict at the start of the year, and sometimes they add to those boards throughout the year. And if you come to it, now, in early June, as of when I'm recording this, you can see which ones have actually sort of kept through and become at least somewhat of a thing. Some of it's niche, some of it is more mainstream, and some of it's just, I have never once seen this in my life, and definitely not in the past year. So it's all guesswork, all of that. It's not something you can rely on and, sink all this time into, oh, but I predict this thing will be popular. Okay. You're risking a lot there. And a lot of these predicted trends, if you're going to take them from, other people's work, so people like Pinterest or anybody else, a lot of this is not actually predicting, it's reactionary, and it's a lot of the time scrambling after, a viral TikTok or two, or, some popular Instagram post. A lot of it is not actually based in very much. So, and again, this plays into the how long does it take you to realise something's a trend if you're using other people's homework, effectively, for that. They could be analysing stuff from a month or 2 months ago by the time they publish it. And then you have to come to a judgment about, okay, but have I actually seen this elsewhere, do my own homework on that, and evaluate, do I think this is going to last or not? And then you're easily looking at, months and months passing, and the trend could already have died by that point. So predicting trends is unlikely to work for you either. This is why TradPub is struggling as much as it is, because I've talked already at length about how long it takes to, draft a book, edit a book, format a book, write synopses, write blurbs, and then we get into querying, and writing query letters, and researching agents, and actually sending queries out. And if you're really good at that, and you have a very streamlined process for all that, you could do that very quickly. But no one's going to get back to you in 2 weeks, are they? The querying timeline, as I would say most people in the writing community know by now, unless you're pretty new, that can easily be multiple years, very, very easily. And that's assuming you can even find somebody who's an acceptable match for your book, who has that on their MSWL, which is manuscript wishlist for those who aren't familiar with the text speak. And this is the problem with a lot of TradPub. They see a trend and they think, okay, well, let's get our agents on that. And the agents say, okay, I'll put that on my wish list. So then you get a whole load of writers querying, but the backlog for agents takes months and months and months to get through. So by the time an agent's actually signed anybody for this trend, it's moved on. And that's why so many things die in trenches, is because, well, the trend's moved on. Why are you bringing me this? That's going to be a conversation that's had. And then even if it's done quickly enough, and that is a humongous if, and an editor actually signs this book, well, the backlog in TradPub is, again, years. So that's not gonna work for you either. And then people get into the headspace of, oh, but I'll get this 6-figure advance and all that. And no, you won't. By the way, if you're trying to debut in TradPub, you are absolutely not going to get 6 figures. No, not a chance in hell. You're going to get, 10% of that, if you're lucky. And if you don't earn out because the trend's moved on, congratulations, but also you might end up owing that money back. And that's something that nobody really seems to want to tell you, is that actually, if you don't earn your advance out, you could just straight up owe that money back to them after a certain amount of time. And that is called huge financial trouble. TradPub is not the risk-free option financially. It's really not, especially because a lot of TradPub actually doesn't do very much marketing. So you're going to be commissioning your own people to do all sorts of marketing and... hang on a minute. Are you putting yourself out of pocket using that advance money that you're quite possibly going to end up owing back? Oh dear. Trad pub isn't the easy, it's not the financial stability route that people like to tout it as being. But let's talk about what right to market can actually mean in practice, because right to market has been twisted into jump on the bandwagon, but that's not what it actually has to be, and it's not what it should be. And I'm not convinced that jump on the bandwagon is ever what right to market was intended to be. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the consistently not top selling, but one of the top selling consistently throughout decades and decades of literature. And that is romance. So there you go, right to market equals right romance, right? A lot of people seem to come to that conclusion. Yeah, it is a lot of people, isn't it? You've probably seen that on the socials if you're on there. You see just how many romance authors there are. And how many romance authors do you see saying, I've been querying this book for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Yeah. Writing romance is not gonna save you for that. Will you overall probably get consistently better sales than in some other genres? Just on average? Probably, yeah. But is it going to be all that much of a difference? Well, that's quite hard to say. And, you know, there are so many romance books and so many romance authors that romance readers can afford to be extremely picky. And you have to be very, very, very good at romance to get very far with it because of that. And if your heart's not in it, pun intended, yeah, it's just not gonna work out for you as well as you would necessarily expect it to think. It's not the instant publishing success romance. There is no instant publishing financial success. It's just not, that's not a thing. You might think it is because someone has debuted and sold 2 million copies after having their book go viral on TikTok, but again, this is probably a trad pub publishing house that has spent, you know, thousands of dollars on a TikTok, and how much of that is actually going to go back to the author is always a big question. And then it's, okay, we went viral over one TikTok, and then, okay, just write the exact same book again, and then you never hear from that author again. If you really want to write to market, if that's really what you want to do, you need to think about what is the market? And this is the part of right to market that really annoys me, is people don't think about what the market actually is as a phrase. What is the market? Is that people on TikTok? Because that TikTok has its demographics, that's a set of people. Is that people on Instagram? That's an entirely different group of people. Is that people on YouTube? That's an entirely different group of people. You're starting to see what I'm getting at here. There is not one market. People are not a monolith. Things have different target audiences. This is why, you know, people who love Marvel are not going to love highbrow poetry. That's two completely different target audiences. That doesn't mean that either of those things are necessarily a success or a failure just because of that. It's they have two different target audiences. They are aiming at two different markets. There is not one the market. That's not how it works. So if you want to go the really business route with this and think, okay, well, what is the market I'm aiming for? Well, do some homework on that then. Think about, okay, well, who am I writing these books for? If this is the direction you want to go, that's perfectly reasonable. and think, okay, well, I want to write books for this particular demographic of people. Well, the best thing to do, honestly, is think about who reads the most books on average. What age range is that? The answer is almost definitely people who are 70 plus. People who are 60 plus, it's actually older people who probably read the most books, have the money to spend on those books. Okay, so what are those sorts of people reading then? And then that's where you get into right to market. Then you've got a market. Okay, well, what do they read? Okay, let's write that. That's what right to market actually should be, if that's the direction you want to go in. So think about the market first. And don't just assume that's TikTok, because that is not the vast proportion of people, especially if you think about, the global aging population thing. Do you think that people under 18 are the majority of the population? Still, the whole global aging population thing? Hang on. Yeah. And especially if you're thinking about doing in-person events, you don't want to leave your hometown. And this is coming at writing from a strictly business point of view, for what it's worth. Well, who are the people in your hometown? Think about who's there. And the other argument with right to market, this is effectively the complete flip side of that, this complete other view is, well, why are you following trends rather than pioneering them? And you can, argue that's the same as predicting trends. Or you can say, well, I'll just do something that no one else has done before then. I will make something that's undeniably good quality that no one else has done. And what that is? That is called a classic. You think about people like Shakespeare, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I've mentioned the podcast before, all these classic novels are innovations in one way or another. If you try and pioneer a trend and people then jump on that, people just say, oh, well, that's the discount version of, this other thing that's better. I mean, how many times has that happened with music? You take a band like Paramore, for example. And regardless of what your view on Paramore is, whether you love them or hate them or are completely indifferent, how many Paramore clone bands were there? And everyone was like, oh, well, you just sound like Paramore, I'll go listen to them instead. Because they're better quality, they do it better. That could be you, with the trend. You pioneer it, everybody goes, oh, but the original author did that better, and then they follow you as an author because you actually have a quality book there. So whether you're pioneering trends or whether you're going the analysis route and thinking, okay, well, this is the market I want to write for, so this is what they read, what matters most is something that is good quality, that will hold a reader's attention and will make people think, oh, actually, I'd like to read something else by the author, rather than thinking, oh, I like enemies to lovers. Alright, so I'll read something else that's enemies. No, you want them to read your book. And really the only way to do that is by having something that's quality. And also bear in mind with this, and I talked about this in the Passion Matters episode, with all of this, actually sticking with a book through the entire publishing rigmarole of drafting and editing again and editing again and editing again and editing again. You can't make something that's really good quality that you're really proud of and you're going to stick with marketing for more than 5 minutes. If you really care about what you're doing, there's a much bigger chance you're going to stick with it. I mean, are you passionate about shelf stacking in Lidl? I mean, that's a job that almost everybody's done. As shelf stacking or working manufacturing or something like that. Well, the key is that we all have done that, but is that something that anybody actually sticks with and wants to do long term? No, not really. because it's not good quality. It's not a good quality experience. It's not something you care about. So if it's something you want to stick with, it's something you need to stick with, something like marketing it. Is marketing the most fun job in the world? No. I, myself, enjoy marketing more than most other writers I've ever talked to. But not every part of it is fun. I'll admit that. It's a lot easier to market something you actually give a crap about. And to stick with marketing it, you have to care about it in order to care about something enough to make it good enough that you actually stick with it through the entire publishing rigmarole and afterwards with all the marketing and everything. It's got to be good and you've got to care about it. And that means, okay, I'll pioneer the trend, I'll just make something that I love, which is a very valid way of doing things. Or whether that's, okay, I'll write to my market and I'll make that really good. Well, preferably, that market includes you. That market really should include you, and you might not be, the average person that reads Agatha Christie or whatever it is, and you might think, okay, well, this is the set of people that read Agatha Christie. There are demographics available for things like that, for what it's worth. If you check out YouGov, you have to make an account now, but you can find that information. It does exist. Maybe you're not the average person that reads Agatha Christie, but you're still in that market, and there are always going to be niches in markets. There are. And well, congratulations, that's just more people to appeal to. So when I say don't write to market, I mean don't write to market when the phrase is used to mean jump on the bandwagon. Don't do that, because you can't. Trying to jump on these trends in the peak of these trends when you haven't got something that's already there, it's just not possible, especially if you're looking at anything other than self-pubbing it. It's just not possible, because I'm part of an indie house. There are timelines and things. I can't just say to my publisher, oh, well, I want a book out in December. They'll say, well, no, because we have timelines and we've got other books coming out, and no, we can't do that. Because I have to throw something in for edits now, and then they've got to try and scramble and say, hey, can you start doing edits for another book tomorrow? And the answer to that is, no, I can't do that. So, you have to self-pub it if you're going to do that, really. You can't, writing to trends is damn near impossible to do, and if you're going to try and, it's not sustainable. Don't write to market by writing like that. Write to market by either pioneering the trend and making something that's just amazing that you love, or write to your target market that includes you and write something you love. At the end of the day, this is an art, this is a labour of love. So, make sure you do love it, and if you love it at the end of the day, you'll enjoy it. When someone's enjoyed it and there's passion in these words, you can tell. And that's what makes something great. So with all this talk of publishing, let's talk about you. And if you're published or well on the way, please do get in touch. You can do that via email. My email is on the screen. Indie and Self-Pub, you are the people I want to hear from the most. There is no genre restriction, no trend restrictions, definitely not any of that. It doesn't have to be a novel, it can be a novella, a short story collection, poetry, whatever you've got. Bring it in, let's see what we can do. But make sure you read the information in the description first and include that in your initial contact, because that'll just make it easier for everybody. And if you're looking for me elsewhere, well, if you're here, you're probably looking for the home of the podcast, and that is Instagram. I'm Jade_Black21 on there, and on Instagram you will find soundbite teaser reels and other things as and when I experiment with them. You'll get advance notice of what the episode for the week is, and I am currently experimenting with content on there and doing more about other indie books I've read and when I get book mail and all of these sorts of things. I'm planning on doing some things after I finished my current indie book haul. I did post a picture on there. I'm a few books into that. The latest one I've read as of recording this is Dustin Cummings' Exiles of a Gilded Moon trilogy. I've read the first book and that. Can't recommend it enough. It is absolutely fabulous. You should absolutely get a copy of that. I can't wait for the next books in the series. Well, book 2 is out, but I haven't got it yet. I will have to do that. If you want to hear me talk more about writing and get semi-live updates on my writing, Twitter is the place for that. I'm JadeBlack21 on there, and for what it's worth, I host the hashtag monthly thrills prompts on there too. And earlier this week, we hit trending for the second time this year with June thrills. All genres are welcome, so come on in and join the party. And I'm also in another place, not just these three. If you like my world building and want to see some exclusive art relating to all that, and other art as well, you can check out my Pinterest. I am Jade_Black21 on there. But for now, that is, I think, all I have. So you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like. It helps the channel a lot. Intro and outro music by me. Copyright JBlack 2024.